Peter, when we say that it's possible to know what this is, we're actually talking about something other than what we know as that which is different than that which sees what we're doing, and that which notices that, let's say, we've been thinking, or that is aware, that which notices.
No. It's not other than anything. There's no otherness. And you can know nakedly and self-verifyingly that there is no otherness. There's this, which includes anything you might possibly think exists, and yet whatever you might possibly think exists doesn't actually exist in the way that you think it does. It's actually this.
So it's not necessarily known through the senses.
Sure, it's known through the senses, but the senses aren't the senses, and there's no throughness. It's not like there's something to be known and then senses as a vehicle or some tunnel and then something that's knowing something. All of that elaborate sort of schematic model of what's happening here is wholly inaccurate. In other words, this has no parts, and it has its inherent nature is not graspable in terms of any kind of qualities that we try to use as modes of analysis. In other words, any kinds of qualities you suppose it might have, such as the quality of observing, or the quality of being objective, or the quality of having a vehicle of experience, or any quality whatsoever. None of those qualities actually apply. They're all wrong. Anything you can think about this is wrong. Period. And you can know that conclusively. And when you stop trying to think about this as something, it becomes quite obvious what it is. It's this. And there's no mystery about it. It is absolute mystery, but there's no mystery about that fact.
Once you know it.
Well, even before you know it, there's still no mystery about it. You just think there is. You may think there is, I don't know. But whatever you think isn't true, so it doesn't matter. You don't even need to stop thinking it. Just thought isn't true, in the sense that it doesn't apply to anything. Nothing is the way you think it is. Period. In a very strong sense. So as soon as you think something, it's already wrong. As soon as you're asking a question about is something like something or something like something, it's every term in the sentence is doesn't apply. So but that's talking about it negatively. That's talking about what it isn't. It isn't anything you think about it. But this is absolutely positive. It is absolutely positive in the sense of
definite.
it's not. This is not anything. It is. It's a positive statement. It is itself. Very much so. Very definitely. So I recommend go to what is rather than looking at what isn't. And so right away all your thoughts and ideas and questions about it are out the window. Because we've established, or I've asserted anyway, that they're not what it is. So what is? Well, this is. This very definitely is. Whatever that means. And then you can look and see what that means by being with this positivity, by being with this fact. But this fact is the way it is. It's not the way it's not. And any way you think of it is a way it's not, and it's not that way. But it is very much, I mean, this is what I mean by, there's a positive side of this. It is very much exactly what it is. It is very much the way it is. So I recommend go to that positivity. So what is? What is? Instead of, don't worry about what isn't, what is? But don't look for it in terms of categories and all that, because you can always cross that off, you can write that off. That's not applicable.
Well, I was looking more at getting at what it is, what is.
Mm-hmm.
From something.
But you can't get at it. Let it come to you. That's what I mean by its positivity. If you're trying to get at something, you're constructing something. If you don't construct anything, what is there? Something. There is something. When you're not constructing, when you're absolutely completely not constructing anything, it's not like that all of a sudden there's nothing. There's something. This is. And you don't need to construct it. You don't need to put it there. You don't need to make it. It's doing itself. Wow. So, cool. So, if you don't construct anything, there's still something. What is it? Just let it show you. Look and see. So don't try and get at it. Just let it get to you, because it is. That's all that's ever been happening. It getting to you, so to speak.
If you don't construct anything, then there is no you.
Yeah, sure.
So, I mean, the impulse to construct is to create the self.
Yeah, sure. It creates a self, it creates structure, it's just a mode of functioning that most of us are very habituated to, and we kind of like it in some sense. It's interesting, keeps us busy and all that. And most of us are not, or many of us, depending on our temperament, are less used to the mode of just not constructing. But the interesting fact is, when we don't construct, it's not like all of a sudden the TV turns off. It's not like all of a sudden everything goes boop. This is what it is. Still, you don't have to maintain it. You don't have to hold it up. It's doing itself. It's holding itself up. And so, what is that in its own native mode? When you're not busy telling it what it is, when you're not busy defining it, when you're not busy, being you, finding it, when you just drop all of that, there's something. We might say, something. For the present moment, don't worry about whether or not it's a thing, because that's another word. So as we already established, that doesn't apply. But still, in all, there's something. So. So what is it that's doing itself? What is it that doesn't go away when you want it to, and doesn't come when you want it to? It's just is. What is it? Look for that. And then when you look for that and look at that, then you can nakedly see the ways in which it is what it is. Again, you won't have accurate words for it, but you can still see it because it's right here to be seen. And you have at your disposal an astounding intelligence that experiences it. And it's not an intelligence you need to manufacture, or you need to create, or you need to do. It's an intelligence that's just there. It does itself. It's part of this. It's this amazing intelligence. Part of this is the experiencing of the present moment. Part of this is all this astounding, astoundingly present and yet wholly uncapturable form and function. All of this is right here, and it's all doing itself. We don't need to do it. When you don't do anything, what's happening? When you don't do anything whatsoever, what's happening? Something happens. Something's happening. What can you not do? And what can you not do? Can you do the sunshine? Can you not do the sunshine? It's just there. So find what's outside the category of doing and not doing, and see what's there. It's very simple.
I think some of this might have come from a conversation Emma and I had, which was, I was trying to say that you can't use your senses to comprehend this, because you can't make sense of it with your senses.
Right.
It is extrasensory.
Right.
It's not without senses, it's just senses don't explain.
Right.
I think that's very... And I think I said you can't use your senses to know this.
Yeah. Well, you can't use your senses because you think they're senses. When you see they aren't senses, then senses themselves are actually extrasensory, and then you're seeing this. Senses aren't really senses. Sight isn't really sight. You know, we think there's an eye that's seeing, and we think there's something being seen, and we think there's some consciousness that's perceiving it, and we think there's light somehow shining somewhere or whatever. And none of those things are true. So, seeing isn't really seeing. Seeing isn't really a sense. There's actually no senses. There's no sensory experience. So the whole model of sensory experience is itself erroneous. Just like there's no body. The whole model of being embodied is erroneous. There is what there is that accounts for our erroneous interpretation of having a body. There is what there is, which accounts for our erroneous interpretation of having senses. But what that is wholly not a body and wholly not senses. It's exactly what it is, which is not in those categories at all. And in that extra categorical sense, it sees what it is, and in that sense, it is all it, and it is all nakedly revealed. But when you're operating in the mode of senses, when you're operating in the mode of a body, when you're operating in the mode of a world, you're completely lost in confusion, because you're operating in fantasy. You're operating in supposing conditions that don't actually apply, and you're trying to find anything real in the context of that unreality. It can't be done. I don't know if that's what accorded with your
that
take
becomes
on
more
it.
eloquent.
That's why I get the big bucks, I guess.
Is this a case where the dream analogy would be cogent, or
It certainly would, of course, very much so. It's
or
very
the
clear.
extrasensory perception would be
Sure.
that which the dreamer as a whole is?
Of course. By what sense is a dream perceived? In a dream, you can think you're seeing, you can think you're touching, you can think you're in a body. You wake up and it's self-evident that can't have been the case, because there's no body there was no eyes to see, there were no ears to hear, there was no world to be seen, there was no world to be heard, and yet somehow apparent seeing and apparent hearing and apparent embodiment happened. How does that happen? How is that experienced? What's up with that? What's going on there? And it's exactly similar to this situation.
There's an apparent body running across their slope.
Oh yeah.
They're over the fence. He's just about to break his neck on the other side.
Well, that would at least put an end to it.
Yeah, so
Oh my God.
So, Peter,
Yeah.
what it seems to me that it's sort of a matter of delay or a matter of time. I mean, if you the body and the senses and any construction like that comes after what's real. I mean, it's added on
Yeah.
in a sense. So it's added on a little later than the immediacy of it.
In a sense, there's a way in which that's true. There's a way in which that's useful, because when you're with absolute immediacy, there's no space to have a body or to have senses or to have. You have to have all of this.
Solid.
Yeah, it's all just. It's already a done deal. So to have all these modes of analysis and all this mapping out and all that takes some sort of reflection and recursiveness, which, whether or not it specifically takes time or takes space or whatever, there's some sort of sense of non-immediacy,
Right.
maybe.
Mm-hmm. So is that what you mean, that the body is not really the body and the senses are not? I mean, is that...
Yes. Sure. I mean, this is a way of perceiving that fact. Immediacy, in absolute immediacy, there's just nakedness. There's just...
Right, you can't name it until...
Yeah, you can't name it until you
Later.
ponder it.
Right.
In the instant you can't name it because it's already gone. So, it's like it's like scientists in a cyclotron or an atom smasher or something. They get some subatomic particle going at the speed of light, and they smash it into another subatomic particle, and it's the whole event takes place. It's over before it starts, right? But they take a picture, and then they can sit and pore over that picture for months, and they go, "Oh, look, see that? This energy came in, and this must mean this energy, this must mean this charge, and this must mean this atomic weight, and all." But in the instant, it's gone. And the instant is real. All of the analysis and the modes and the mapping and the conceptualization are just fantasies. And the fantasies are made of the instant, and they happen in the instant. But they don't. In the instant, they don't exist as fantasies. In the instant, they don't exist as thought, as analysis. In the instant, they just exist as this. Can't see it. It's like all of a sudden there's a huge flash of light, bang. And then what happened? Was that a bomb? Did a plane crash? And so, but in the instant of the flash of light, it's just a flash of light. It's not even a flash of light. It's just, and then it's a flash of light. Oh, what happened? But when it's just, there's no flash of light. There's no what happened. There's no bomb. It's just.
But that continually, I mean,
Yes,
it's
that's
not
all
like
there
there's
is.
that, and then there's another one of those.
Yeah. No, that's all there ever is. It's this flash. All there ever is this flash. This is a flash.
And it's only one. I mean, it's
Yes.
there's only one of those.
Yes, only one. Only one forever. Beyond space and beyond time. And this is that. This is that soul flash. It's like your exercise of keeping your eyes closed and all of a sudden opening them for an instant, In that instant that your eyes open, it's just a flash, right? And then you can sort of think of, what did I see? And then you can sort of dream about it or something. But even the dreaming about it is just a flash. The naked present is completely ungraspable. It's completely inconceivable. And you can know that, you do know that, very, very directly, very, very obviously. It's the only thing you ever know. All the rest is just arrogance. We know this.
Yeah, it's funny because the less and less I know, and the less I'm sure of, I find myself functioning better and being with things.
Of course, because this is hyper functional. This is hyper intelligent. This is doing everything. This is doing all the quarks in the universe. So, yeah, I mean.
I found it useful to kind of just, when I come around to not knowing or knowing or whatever, just to have that thought that I'm being done.
Sure. Yeah.
And whatever's happening is not really much of any of my doing.
Right.
And and it's very confusing in a lot of ways. But then when an event happens, I'm much
Sure.
better off.
Yeah, because when you think, oh, I'm being done, that's spinning off into fantasy, but it's a fantasy which doesn't go anywhere. It's a fantasy which comes right back here. It's not like, oh, I'm being done and this is doing it and this is blah, 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 blah. It's just, oh, I'm being done.
What's going on?
Leaves you hanging. Which leaves you right back here.
It does leave you back.
So spinning off into those kinds of very minor recursive fantasies that don't take you anywhere, as opposed to constructing a whole world there. As opposed to like, oh, I'm this and I have to do that tomorrow, and God damn it, my history is this and my this and my money and my life and my fulfillment and my goals, and God, I'm going to get sick and die and stuff like that. I mean, this whole curriculum vitae that we generate. I mean, God, what a baroque fantasy. But then you have these simpler fantasies like I'm being done, or it's all God, or Om Namah Shivaya, or something. I mean, it's fantasy, but it's a fantasy that doesn't really take you very far, and then it leaves you
loops back
right here.
Well, God and the ones that have all become religions can lead you all sorts of places.
Well, it can.
I much prefer I'm being done and leave it at that.
Yeah.
But it's all God's will, then all of a sudden you have all these fantasies about God, and
Well, you may or may
you
not.
should be good because then God will do well by you or not.
Oh, God's got a lot of attachments.
Yeah, exactly. But you weren't raised in any religion, so.
Always just this unspeakable fact, this flash.
It's happening on its own and it can't be stopped.
Yeah.
And I can't see what's I mean, it's mysterious, completely mysterious how that's happening or what
Well,
it's
it's
made
mysterious
out.
how it's happening from an analytical sense. In other words, analysis fails. Analysis inherently falls short. But it's clear how it's happening in itself.
So that's from investigating.
No, that's from letting go of investigation.
Okay. So it's clear how it's happening in itself.
Sure. Flash.
Would you say it's one flash or many flashes?
But see, as soon as you go there, you're in analysis again, and you're off in fantasy.
Right.
One and many don't apply. Even flash doesn't apply.
Okay.
Flash is a minor fantasy which doesn't, if you're wise, doesn't take you very far. Takes you back to flash, and then flash. Of course, it's really before flash. It's what was that? Flash, and so it spins you off.
Right. It was a flash.
Yeah.
I saw it.
Yeah.
But even like the thought, I don't know, like where I go with flash is like, it's almost like I feel like I have to look for something. So it's almost like it's something like maybe the word immediacy or something is helpful. I don't know. I mean, because it's almost like I find like it's almost like I'm looking. Where's the flash? What's the flash?
Yeah. Well, these are all tricks. And of course, because they're verbal, because they're conceptual, we've already established they aren't accurate. So, and if the trick doesn't work for you, then it's not a very good trick. So, the trick The trick is to find tricks that are good tricks. And this, of course, is very subjective.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right.
But if you get the basic principle that nothing you can think is accurate or true.
Right.
Period. Nothing you can think. Anything that can be put into words even vaguely is wrong.
Right.
So right away that sort of crosses off
The whole thing.
a whole universe of analysis. And then coupled with that is what can you not do?
Yeah. Yeah.
Can you stop this? Can you
Absolutely.
start this?
Right.
You can't.
Right.
You can't not do this.
Right. The analysis, the whole thing. But the
This
analysis is
this
happening.
can't not happen. This can't not be happening in the way that it is. So, we go there. What's that? What is it that can't not be happening? What is it that you can't stop? What is it that you can't start? What is it that you can't do? What is it that you can't not do? And that the answer to that riddle is this. But again, the riddle is more tricks. And again, if it's either good tricks or bad tricks,
Right.
depending on how much mileage you can get out of it.
I told an anecdote in one of these meetings some time ago that I'm just remembering again that I was driving somewhere on the highway at high speed, and I suddenly thought, oh my gosh, I forgot to bring such and such. And then I said, no, it's in the back seat. And I didn't know whether it was in the back seat or not. And I would have to turn my head completely around 180 degrees to see it, and the little car goes so quick off the side, it doesn't have much inertia. So I made a very quick look in the back seat, and then I turned my head back to the driving again. And I didn't know what was in the back seat until I created it by looking forward. I was looking at the road again, and then I realized, oh yes, it's in the back seat. But now I'm beginning to wonder if it was in the back seat. What was that? I saw something there, and until I defined it as the thing, and I don't even remember what it was, I didn't know it was there. I didn't even know I'd seen it. But I constructed all of that out of my mind as I was driving, looking forward.
And you're doing exactly the same thing right now. Anything you think is here, you're constructing in your mind. There is something, but it's not a category of things here. It's a category of this. And likewise, when you looked in the back seat, you didn't know what was there.
I saw something, but I couldn't possibly know what it was. I had no.
And that's what's actually happening here. You're seeing something, so to speak, and you can't possibly know what it is. And yet you have the facility or the chutzpah to generate a whole narration that you then may hold to have some accuracy. But every element of that narration is inaccurate, wholly inaccurate. The only thing that's actually here is what you see. And I mean that in a loose sense.
That was Kant saying you can't know the thing in itself. It's unknown and unknowable.
But the seeing is actual, so to speak. And of course, seeing isn't seeing, because seeing is an idea, and ideas which was already established are inaccurate. So. But nevertheless, there's nothing seen, there's just a seeing. And you can know conclusively that there are no things here. You can know conclusively that you can't know what's here without creating it in your imagination, without pretending.
So,
and yet this is exactly as it is, exactly what it is.
So for me to know about what was about the best thing I can know about what was in the back seats is that I can't know. Is that correct? Because anything I construct is wrong.
Right.
So I can't really know what's in the back seat.
Well, there's just there's no what and there's no back seat.
Well, yeah.
But that doesn't mean there's nothing.
Right.
That doesn't mean that there's zero or.
Well, I'm taking this to the level of realization of truth.
Yes.
So the only truth that I can know is that I can't know.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yeah. But you can know, but that's putting it in a negative, and
But
the actual truth is supremely positive. You know, like what I'm trying to vaguely refer to as flash. You know, you can put it the flash in negative terms and say it's not anything whatsoever that you can, you know.
Yeah, I can see how awkward
And
and
yet,
cumbersome that is.
Yeah.
But then you've said over and over, you can know positively something about that. What can I know about it?
Yeah, that's the point, because it is positive. You know, when we talk about it, we tend to approach it negatively. It's not. Oh no, it's not this. It's not that. No, anything you think is wrong. No, it's not your fantasies. No, it's not. You know, and all this negativity implies that you're taking stuff away and there's going to be nothing left. But it's the other way around. You're not taking anything away because those things aren't here. What is here? That's the positive. What's this? There's a here-ness here, and it's not a here-ness, but it is here. What is it? It's positive. You can go to it positively. You don't need to. I mean, the only way you can actually go to it is positively. But you can't discover that positivity as long as you're throwing your imagined positivity at it.
I'm just trying to think what I knew positively.
Well, it's not a what.
When I was little.
It's not a what. It's this.
It's a flash.
Sure, it's a flash. Call it a flash. You know, metaphorically speaking.
So
and then intuit what that flash is. Okay, it's a flash. It's not a flash, but what's the flash?
So the knowing, it's not really, it seems to me, knowing in the sense, knowing for me implies a kind of one thing knowing something else.
Yeah,
but the knowing is by being inside of it in a sense.
It's knowing by identity.
Identity, yeah.
It's what knowing actually is. The knowing that is something knowing something else in accordance with the human concept is wholly inaccurate. The actual knowing is by identity. The only actual knowing is by being. And there is no other knowing in actuality. Knowing is not something being known or removed by something over some span or some gap. Knowing is actually being. Knowing is isness. And again, so that this puts us back into positivity. There is some kind of isness. There is some kind of being, even if it's not an isness and not a being, because those are ideas. But
so it also changes from a feeling like as a human being kind of confused and powerless and and not,
Yeah.
it's small to
Yeah.
being the opposite of that.
Exactly. Total positivity.
So,
Total being.
right.
And it can't be said. But it's completely obvious because there's nothing else. All religion and philosophy have been as artful as they can to try and say it. It's Satchidananda, it's Shiva Shakti, it's this, it's that. And all those are very interesting and eloquent and artful ways of trying to approach it. But they're tricks, and they are not it. But fortunately we have the real thing. So we don't need to approach it through a vehicle of philosophy or a vehicle of ideas or a vehicle of Sanskrit phrases. We have
There's nothing but it.
this. We have the real thing. And this is wholly positive. It actually is what it is. It's not only not what it's not, which is how we often talk about it, which makes it sound very negative. It actually is what it is. So what is it? What is it that is what it is? And all of a sudden you're on the positive side of things. All of a sudden you're on the sunny side of the street.
No longer dancing in the rain.
You've always been on the sunny side.
I think when I first sort of sensed this, it seemed way too strong and too hot and demanding to like keep your hand on it, because it was just way too much.
Yeah, at first it does, because we look at it from within the human
As
context,
if
and it is
I'm
so
have
huge, so it's off the scale. And
So
the
I
human,
think that's the fear of, because it is very hot.
yeah.
Um,
But but that's because initially we're approaching it from within a human frame of reference, which and within which context it's off the scale. It's like it's like, what it's like in Greek mythology they would say a mortal looks upon the face of a god and then dies or explodes or bursts into flames or something.
right.
And this is exactly an analogy of this curious fact that from within the human framework, this is like, but from within its own framework, it's very effortless. It's very
So
easy.
just jump.
Yeah, because we actually are already in that framework, because that's the only place we've ever been.
Right.
But there can be this transition. There can be this kind of shocking and jarring aspects to it as we have these revelations and these discoveries, and we're sort of living in two worlds. Which is spirituality is a challenge. Don't try this at home, kids, kind of thing. This is real.
It's probably more difficult for some personalities than others.
Of course. Yes, down to karma, down to love.
Yeah. Hotter for some than others.
I mean, for perhaps many beings, perhaps the vast majority of beings, they don't approach this revelation or realization, and maybe in a lot of cases it's because they're constitutionally incapable of it.
Yeah.
They couldn't handle it. They don't have the necessary chutzpah, the necessary craziness, necessary arrogance, the necessary
What?
unbalancedness, eccentricity. Who knows?
Let's get down to it.
Discontent. Enough discontent.
I hear people they have other things to do.
They do, absolutely.
Oh, they have a life.
Yeah.
Got a golf game
That's
together.
great. Exactly. You got a life. Yeah. People to see, how is it to break.
Peter, I have a question on, is there any finiteness to the infinite?
Well, yeah, there is as much as there is, in the sense that the reason there's as much finiteness as there can appear to be, but finiteness isn't really finiteness again.
Well, there seems to be, to me, there seems to be finiteness because I see
Right.
form and I see
Yeah.
the texture of form and.
Right. But what you see as finiteness is actually not finiteness. That has the property of being interpretable as finiteness. And you are accepting that, and you find yourself making that interpretation, and you are sort of stopping there and saying, okay, well, I can interpret this as finiteness, and you're stopping there. You're kind of sort of resting there. It's like, okay, this looks like finiteness to me. But if you made the leap somehow, by hook or by crook, that, well, wait a minute, it looks like finiteness, but is it really? Maybe it's not finiteness that somehow has the astounding property of being able to look as if it was finiteness. How would that be? What could that be like? How could, what's going on there? And then if you could somehow make that leap or play with that, maybe you would discover that finiteness is dubious. Finiteness has fuzzy edges. Finiteness finiteness is actually a little slippery and a little hard to pin down. As obvious as it is, the closer you look at it, the more questionable it becomes. I mean, in the history of science, this has been the trend. There was Newtonian physics, and apples are apples, and matter is matter, and this is this, and that's that, and for every force there's an equal and opposite force, and it's all very nice and cut and dried, and very finite and very logical. But then quantum mechanics comes along and starts looking, and particles are actually kind of waves sometimes. So these particles that have sort of a finite spatial field are actually wave functions which meaningfully exist in all of space as a kind of a bell curve of probability, but there's never actually a zero value in any point in space in terms of their location. And they said, and this seems to be actually true. This isn't just a cute idea and a mathematical construct, but it actually has experimental results. And this was so freaky that the majority of scientific establishments would ostracize these guys. They said, "You're fucking nuts. You're a mystic. You're like spewing bullshit." Einstein did too. Einstein looked at this and said, "No, God does not play dice with the universe. Things are things, and this is this, and that's that." But experiment, and they look, and well, hey, we're getting these results. It actually seems to be like this in some way. Maybe these descriptions that we're coming up with don't really cross the T's and dot the I's, but something's going on here that's pretty, that sort of takes finiteness and just gives it the kibosh, And so even science is doing that, And we have our material worldview, this is a table and this is its surface, and above the table is not the table, is air, and below the table is wood, and there's a surface here. But, you get an electron microscope and you look at the thing, and it's fuzzy. It's really fuzzy, And, you start measuring its fields, and you start, it's like, well, where does the table end? And where does the rest of the universe begin? Where does the universe end, and where does the table begin? And the whole thing starts to get very, very squishy if we look closely. And this is measurable. This is actually observable. And where does finiteness go in that context? And yet it can seem like finiteness if you don't look too close.
So I guess so. What I just got from that discourse that you just gave was that finiteness must be just in consciousness. It must not be anything that is outside of consciousness.
Yeah, sure.
And so the fact that I see form and I see the texture of form and I feel my senses, I experience my senses,
Right.
must mean that everything is in consciousness. It's not, there's nothing outside of my consciousness.
Right, sure.
That could be finite.
That's a good jumping off point. I mean, what's happening here is of a nature that it can appear as if it was finiteness appearing in consciousness with forms and textures and all that. And that doesn't mean it is those things, but its nature is such that it can viably appear as if that was more or less true to some extent. But that doesn't mean that's what it is. That just means that whatever it is, it has this astounding property of being able to look like that. And so then, interesting challenge, an interesting exploration would be, well, what other ways can it look? Okay, it can look like fineness, it can look like form, it can look like texture. What is there anything else that's actually available within the experimental field that somehow doesn't conform to those properties, and what's going on there? So you have finiteness and you have form and you have structure and you have that, and then you're drifting off to sleep at night, and the form and the structure is kind of going, but there's something. And all of a sudden, is it finite? Does it have form? Does it have texture? Well, kind of yes, kind of no. And all of a sudden, you're in another zone. So again, it's all just playing with it. It's all playing with it and discovering, pushing your own boundaries to see what alternatives are.
Well, what is it that generates the consciousness?
Well, that's the question. What is it?
Yeah.
What is it?
I mean, the consciousness stream just doesn't stop. It just goes on.
Well, something doesn't stop. Is it a consciousness stream? I mean, again, we can viably interpret it as a consciousness stream. But what do we mean by that? What do we mean by consciousness and what do we mean by stream? And if you look very, very closely, again, it might get a little strange. Kind of like finiteness looks like finiteness, but then you start getting closer to it and it starts to get a little strange.
Well, the way that I understand it, and I'm sure that this is inaccurate, but I'm just going to say it anyway, that everything that I experience in my world is consciousness.
Sure, that's a good jumping off point. That's a good provisional, because that's a step away from the normal human materialist worldview. So that's great. So now you've kind of pried yourself loose from that, and now you're in this. Okay, great. So then, but don't set up housekeeping. Don't assume that's the end of the line. It's like, okay, here I am. Now everything's consciousness. What are the implications? What is this consciousness? What's up with that? How does that work? What's going on? And, what sort of doors present themselves to leave that room, and what other kinds of rooms could you go into that are beyond the everything is consciousness room? And again, this is a matter of playing with it, experimenting, in any way that presents itself. I suggest we take one of our customary 5-minute breaks. See you all in 20 minutes.
Chai refill break.
Well, yeah, mainly.
Yeah.
Mainly, I'm not inside.
I need bread in my thing. Here's the refill for you.
In your case, you certainly have the pleasantness and absolute wanton instability. You make great progress in this area. You're a shoo-in.
Thanks for the crazy.
Say a word. Say a word.
Good job. Good job, Fuzzy.
You know, I'm going to form it. Good job, Fuzzy.
Good job. Good job, Fuzzy's luscious sleeves.
Holly, thank you for that. That was that hit the spot. Your insightful remarks about just how hot and maddening it is.
Yeah.
Face up against the glass awakening.
I like that.
Wow.
And it was hot and demanding. That was the other thing.
Yeah.
Hot, demanding. Yeah.
Demanding, yes, I wouldn't classify it as hot, but
No.
Yeah, demanding was, yeah.
crazy making or disconnecting from the usual, the stories. But I have way.
We'll be back shortly.
Talking to the fan base.
Yes, talking to Suzanne and whoever else is there, Alan, Logan.
We wonder about him sometimes. Did you make a pie, Swami?
Apple, peach, blueberry cobbler.
Oh man, just apple peach blueberry cobbler. He slaved,
Really?
he
So you didn't
slaved
make
over a
pie,
hot
is that what you're
stove. Okay, I guess this is the one thing I have to bring my Hoku thing for.
Stacy, thing with there's a release.
I would like to understand about these sparkles.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what you mean. Is it, do I need to?
No.
That was easy.
But I can talk about that a bit if you're interested. It's just part of noticing the astounding aspects that this presents itself as. And one of the ways that it presents itself is as differentiated and yet instantaneous. And when you take and discontinuous too.
You don't mean differentiated objects?
Not as objects, but as differentiation. It's the differentiation that is the basis for the perception of objects. But in the differentiation, there's no objects; it's just differentiation, and the differentiation is instantaneous, of course, because it's now. And so, what is that? What does it look like? And it's also discontinuous. There's an element of discontinuity. And when you look at that, it looks a lot like what you see when you close your eyes and look at the inside of your eyelids. It just looks like a lot of little sparkles, a lot of little dots. They're like a TV screen where there's just a bunch of pixels and they're all different from each other and they're all just instantaneously bang, just what they are. It's not important. It's just a noticeable aspect of how a way that this can appear. That again is contrary to our normal materialistic worldview, where there's things and objects and they're sort of sitting there relatively stably and inertly. And if you notice it, actually it's just all these little instantaneous flashes.
So the orange of your shirt is instead of being one continuous surface of solidness, it's not.
Yeah, look and see. Mm-hmm. Look and see if you experience it. And it's not important. Mm-hmm. It's not necessarily particularly relevant.
Right.
It's just interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But there's many, but none of these aspects of the way this can appear, again, are definitive or are comprehensive or are even what they seem to be. But they're interesting as modes of noticing how astounding this is.
And how unlike the conventional way of establishing it.
Yes. which is the main point. Ultimately, one lets go of, oh, it's this, oh, it's that, and it's just free fall. But in the process of coming to how amazing this is, noticing these aspects of it can be particularly interesting, because they're real, they're present, they're explicit flesh. They're real, they're present, they're explicit, and they are contrary to the human worldview. Another way of talking about or approaching the sparkles is that experience has a graininess to it. And that's kind of what I mean when I say discontinuity. But again, you don't. It's a mistake to concretize these things as, oh, there's a graininess and there's a this and there's a that, and reality is somehow made of these components somehow strung together like a machine. Reality is wholly beyond these things, but these are aspects of the way it can appear. Just like finiteness is an aspect of the way it can appear. The normal Yogic worldview is an aspect of the way it can appear. And all of these things are, indicative of absolutely nothing other than this. Confusion and delusion in the crazy human worldview, materialism, is indicative of nothing other than this, because this is what generates it. But that's not all it generates. It can generate all these other modes too, and that's interesting. Not that the modes are necessarily important in themselves, but they reveal aspects of how this can reveal itself, how this can appear. It's okay.
Okay.
Sterilize me. It's untouched by human hands.
That's right.
Peter, could you say more about when you say discontinuous?
Mm-hmm.
I don't really have any way to understand that or feel it.
I don't know that it's particularly important. Continuous would mean that there was thinking of it spatially, that somehow what's happening here and what's happening here is bridged by what's happening here, that's somehow exactly the same thing. So there's one thing happening here, and then that same thing is happening here and here and here and here and here. Discontinuous means that something's happening here, something's happening here, something's happening here, something's happening here, and we may lump them all together as a set, but what is actually happening in each location is unique and not dependent upon or necessarily connected in any explicit way with what's happening here, what's happening here, what's happening here, what's happening here, what's happening here.
You're saying that's more a reality?
No, I'm saying that's one aspect of the way experience presents itself. And that being the case, that's interesting because that reveals a facet of the way that reality can appear to be.
I don't think I'm quite with you.
Well, it's not important, like I said.
Just a way of expressing it.
Well, you could look at it as another trick. I mean, it's like, how many different ways can reality appear to be? And it's silly to catalog them, because the point isn't that these things are meaningful in themselves, and it's important to know this, and important to know that, and important to know this, and then you know them all, and then you get to graduate. It's more that these various modes are interesting as modes of ways in which this can reveal itself. But they aren't important, they aren't essential. What this is not dependent upon being revealed in this particular way or in some other particular way. So whatever resonates for you is what's valuable to you in your relationship to this. And so if something feels not particularly relevant or doesn't really click, don't worry about it. Maybe it will some other time, or maybe it's not important, or whatever.
And so as the building of a relationship to this gets on, then what would, and you're picking up tricks and experimenting with tricks and throwing away tricks and
Sure.
getting more
Yeah.
and this and that. And what are there better tricks, worse tricks, just tricks that work for you?
There's no tricks that are better or worse intrinsically. The tricks are better if they work for you better. Tricks intrinsically are meaningless.
At the time and place.
Yeah. But if you find a trick and it has utility for you, then that makes it a good trick. Not that the trick itself is anything. It's just bullshit.
One of the reasons I asked about the continuity or discontinuity is I can't seem to find anything that I can't seem to find consciousness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, me neither.
There's sort of like two aspects in a way. One is a growing sense that what we call consciousness isn't anything else but what this is.
Right.
And there's, so you don't see it.
Right.
There's no one thing or another.
Right. Yeah. That's my experience too.
And the trying, for me, feels like this kind of on and off. This so fast that it's kind of like a movie running, but it's a bunch of it's like kind of a sense of seeing, trying to do that, and then a sense of kind of closing my eyes and reflecting, or trying to, or maybe that instant is somehow codified.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that happens so fast. But that just, when I see it that way, it just feels so clunky and false and gives me once really.
Yeah, sure.
And then it just kind of collapses, or not that way. Something, the not sense starts to fall away.
Mm-hmm.
It just isn't, it kind of disappears because it's not sense.
Yeah, sure.
And then there's just I can't quite believe it, but there's this sense of it's like C, I know I'm using the word C cup. C cup is one thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we have all these very Baroque models of what's happening. Of consciousness is seeing an object, and and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. In actuality, none of the elements of these models even exist. There's no consciousness, there's no seeing, and there's no cup. There's this, and this can, semi-meaningfully be interpreted as, consciousness sees a cup, but that's not actually what this is. And when you see that, you let go of worrying about consciousness and seeing in cups, and you go more to this, to whatever degree you're able. And then maybe you have you may have some other conundrum or stumbling point where you get caught up, and then you look at that. And again, the elements of which that situation is composed of don't actually exist. And then if you're fortunate, you'll discover that'll fall away, and so on and so forth.
Well, right now it feels like there's this pattern of trying to see,
Right.
which can't happen.
Right.
Just,
Well, here's a good way to play with that. Try to not see. Yeah. And the seeing that you can't stop is the true seeing. The seeing that you can't start is the true seeing. What you can not do is true. Can you not see? No, you can't. So the seeing that you can, right? It's not. No, of course it's not seeing. But what it is that you cannot not do, is what's actually happening.
some weird way that makes sense, or not sense, but it just is apparent. It's like that.
Yeah,
Like that.
sure.
I don't know. But I guess my question is, so okay. I mean, this rut is so deep. I guess it seems so. It seems so deep. Maybe it's not deep. I don't know.
But that's it. Again, we get caught up where we get caught up, and play with it, and you will stay caught up, or eventually you'll come to a point where you'll see that the elements that you're caught up on don't actually exist as such.
Well, that's sort of what's going on, but
Yeah.
still it's happening.
Yeah.
How can that be?
Well,
I mean, I can see
because then you discover happening isn't happening, and you discover ruts aren't ruts, and you discover caught up isn't caught up. It's just this, and then you begin to see more and more nakedly what this is. This is that which seems like normalcy. This is that which seems like the hell of human psychology. This is that which seems like normal life. This is that which seems like never-ending mental gymnastics. This is that which seems like, constant wrestling with one's metabolism. This is that which seems like all these different modes, but it isn't any of them. But what it is what can seem like all these things and various other things. You can elaborate if you want to. So these things don't stop, but they never started because they aren't actually what they seem to be. They're this. But it's not like all this stuff stops. It's that you discover that it never was. And this is.
Well, all those come up, and there's this awareness, if you will, or it's all going on. So it's like mush. It's kind of like a textured mush.
Yeah, textured mush. Sure. That's a good way to put it. Textured mush. That works.
You like that?
Or hyperspace folding through itself. That works. God farting. That works. I don't know. Yes. But whatever it seems like, it's exactly this. And this is not what you think it is. So whatever mode you're thinking it might be, no matter how sophisticated and how far out there, it's not that.
I know.
Textured mush is not sophisticated.
No.
Textured mush is not sophisticated.
No, it's not too far off the mark either, though. Just textured mush is it. Just throw out the texture and throw out the mush. And you've got it. That's it. Hit the nail on the head.
think you have to throw out the it as well.
And then throw out the throwing out, and then don't bother to throw out any of it, and et cetera, et cetera.
I had this funny experience. When I woke up this morning, I was just after I woke up, I was like looking at my bed, and I thought, I don't know what any of this is. I mean, it's just like I read a real tough, long novel, and somewhere 3/4 of the way, I lost where I was in it. It was really hard. Like a rubber band that's got stretched like really too far, and it does not going back.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Abandon hope, all ye who enter here. Well, your bed may not be a bed anymore, but you still have a place to sleep.
Once I got in function with everything, it was okay.
Sleep isn't sleep either, so you don't need to worry.
The isness or the here-ness, which is everything that's happening, it seems to be, to me, that seems to be it.
Yes, that's it. The isness, the here-ness. Exactly. Yes, yes, yes. Just be with that as absolutely nakedly and non-conceptual as you can. It's what doesn't go away. It's what's doing itself,
But it is constant change.
Yeah, it looks, yeah.
Because it's, again, I'm getting back to this consciousness stream. It's just a stream of never-ending.
Yeah, that's an aspect. That's an aspect of how it appears. Is what we call never-ending change. Absolutely. It's very interesting. But again, when you look very, very closely and very subtly at what this change is, it's not a simple thing in the least. It's astounding. It's astounding.
Yeah, there seems to be a presence that comes through somehow in the changing phenomena that's happening. There's
Absolutely.
some presence there that seems to be getting stronger.
Yeah, yeah. That's it. That's that presence. Just be with that presence. And one of the real powerful aspects of being with that presence is you can't really say what it is. You can't pin it down. And yet, it is. So that's very powerful, because that's wholly outside of finiteness or not. That's outside of your human life or not. That's outside of this or that. It just is. And it's undeniable, and it's profound. It's very profound.
Yeah, well, I think I've been understanding a lot of the discussions that we've been having about conceptualizing in worldviews and all that, but I've taken a little bit different perspective now, if there is a perspective, in that I see this all now as just the inherent functioning of the inherent intelligence,
Yeah.
and that it's doing all of this
Yes.
spin doctoring and narratives and fantasies and stories, and
Yeah.
it's Shakti. It's not mine or me
Yes.
doing anything.
Exactly. So it's
And-
doing all that. It's making the light appear. It's making the form appear. It's making the change appear. It's doing all of that. Yeah, absolutely. And it is this presence. It's this astounding presence. I mean, that's the positivity I was talking about earlier. You know, we talk about what it's not, and it's not this, it's not that, it's not this, but it is this. It is this presence. It is thisness.
And so I can think of myself as I am,
Certainly.
because I am the isness, or I am the here-ness. I am
Yes.
this.
Yes.
So then there's no searching,
That's right.
no investigation.
That's right. You've got what there is to search for. You are what there is to search for, and you already are it. So you don't need to go find it. Yeah, that's true. That's very true.
So Peter, I find myself going in and out of being present with whatever this is. Are you at a point where you're pretty much in and don't come out? Or?
When you're not present with this, what are you present with?
That's a good question. No clue.
I would suggest it is this. Just in a different guise, perhaps. So you may be thinking of it, certain guises in which it seems to appear as being presence, and certain other guises in which it seems to appear as not being present. But of course you're present with something, somewhere. Even if you're present with unpresence, you're present with it. Something's happening.
Yeah.
We have, this is a very, very, very common challenge in spirituality, is we define what realizing it or meditation or clarity or presence or something is in a subtle but specific way, and then we of course concurrently define ways in which other conditions aren't those things. But all of that's erroneous. This never departs, this never leaves. This is that which always obtains, this is that which is always the case. That's what I mean when I said, find what you cannot not do. In other words, to put that positively, find out what is always happening. And that is what is real. Anything that seems to come and go is a misinterpretation. Because reality doesn't come and go.
Well, it sure seems like it does.
Yeah. Because you're interpreting reality as being some subset of it, and then you're interpreting some other subset of reality as being reality going or reality gone, but it isn't that.
Reality not.
You're misunderstanding it. See, that's a misunderstanding. Reality is the only thing that's always present. But it's not present as a set of conditions. Yeah. It can look like anything. And what it looks like doesn't actually exist as such.
But it's such a...
It's fine. It's a fine point. Yeah, it's a knife edge. You know? And that's the challenge, is to be with that knife edge.
Yeah.
You know, find out what's always true, and anything that seems to be not always true is misinterpretation. Because there's actually nothing that's not always true. Nothing exists that's not always true. Did you follow that?
That's a koan and a half.
Yeah, did you follow it? In other words, if there's something that seems to be not always true, if there's something that seems to come and go, that's a misunderstanding, because actually nothing comes and goes. So if something seems to come and go, you're thinking something is a certain way when it isn't actually.
I'm just missing it, if that's the case.
Yeah. You know, you're missing it when you think it's there, and you're missing it when you think it's gone. Because the it that could be there, that could go, and the it that could be gone, that could be there, is not actual. Because what is actual cannot come and cannot go.
Yeah. I mean...
But what you're misinterpreting, the misinterpretation itself is actually reality. It's just being misinterpreted. You're misunderstanding it.
I get it, but then there's this odd little equation in my head that says, well, it is reality, and then I'm not in reality, and then I am in reality. And
that's your challenge. That odd little equation is a worldview. It's a belief system, and it's wrong. So challenge it not by challenging it. Challenge it just by sidestepping it. Leave it altogether.
And I do that, and then I can slip back.
Sure. But when you slip back, you haven't slipped back because there's nothing there other than reality.
Would you stop, Nafar?
It's funny.
She's the Greek chorus.
I missed that.
Israeli chorus in this case.
Sorry.
It's okay. That's really okay.
Well, it is very funny. I mean, it's very, very funny, and we all know this. We all know this conundrum profoundly. You know, it's just fascinating that this can appear to be so. It's fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
because,
if you sit with it, it's
because we have subtle attachment to appearances. We think, something that looks like this is something, and something that looks like that is something else, and that's not the case.
Wow. I mean, that is just. I mean, I've been. There are levels of depth with that. I get to a point, and right. And then there's just infinity.
Infinity
of point, of point, of point, of point, and that fries a part of me that
is well fried.
Yes. Put some sauce on it.
Toast it up, serve it up, and be done with it.
Yeah.
I'd love to. It just keeps hanging on. No, I know this. No, I know this.
But appearances are very, very tricky. I mean, this is the cutting edge. We think appearances are something. We think appearances are what they seem to be. Or not what they seem to be, but we think there's something. And in actuality, appearances are absolutely nothing. Specific. And all appearances are 100% this.
So what's that grounded vanilla? What did you say? What did you say?
Textured mush?
Oh, yeah.
Textured mush.
Mustard texture.
Without the texture or the mush.
Yeah. Because, the basis, the basic structure of misunderstanding in spirituality is thinking that what conditions look like indicates their relationship to reality. So if they look a certain way, they're closer to reality. If they look a certain way, they're farther from reality. If they look a certain way, they're clarity. If they look a certain way, they're a delusion. And that is the basis of error. That's the fundamental basis of error. In actual fact, nothing looks like anything. In other words, appearance is here, but when you look at it, you can't find anything. You literally can't say what's happening. You can never say what's happening. So any given appearance isn't anything in particular. And as it morphs into nothing in particular, forever. So it's always nothing in particular, and it's always exactly this. So when you collapse that nothing into particular subtly into, oh, this is clarity, this is, confusion, this is whatever. This is hunger, this is love, this is stupidity, this is whatever. I mean, as soon as you fill in that blank, this is blank, you are wrong.
Putting a fantasy together.
Yeah, putting a fantasy together. And any qualification of any experience, any appearance, no matter how subtle, that fills in that blank is wrong. Because the blank actually is filled in with this. This is this. Always. Oh, this is this. And now this is this. And now this is this. And now this is this. You seeing a pattern here? And now this is this. And now
you said at one point there were no patterns.
That's right. You did.
It was the last thing.
He was lying.
all tricks.
He was lying to his.
Would you buy Sunday? Would you buy a used scarf?
Read the fine print. He's lying all the time.
Yeah. And this is the crux of all of our problems. We've always thought that what we are is dependent upon appearances, dependent upon circumstances. Success, failure, health, disease, pleasure, pain. You know, we define our circumstances in these various terms, and then we struggle with it, and we hate it, and we loathe it, and we crave this, and we loathe that, and blah blah blah. This is the wheel of samsara. This is the entire spiritual dilemma is that this one very, very simple phenomena of imagining that reality depends upon what it looks like. Imagining reality depends upon circumstances. In actuality, very fortunately, it turns out it doesn't. Because there are no circumstances. There's only reality. And reality is that which can look like circumstances. And it always is looking like some circumstance or other, even if it's looking like a non-circumstance. That's the circumstance of no circumstance. Okay. So reality is that which looks like circumstances. But there are never any circumstances, there's always just reality. And that fact, that realization, that discovery, of course, is the ultimate solution to the problem of thinking that reality, i.e. you, depends upon circumstances. It turns out you don't. as long as you think you do, you're just playing the same game on various levels of subtlety. Oh yeah, this is good, I'm winning. Oh, this is bad, I'm losing. I'm healthy, I'm sick. I'm living, I'm dying. I'm getting rich, I'm getting poor. I'm making friends, people are hating me. Whatever. There's this constant gamesmanship. This constant gamesmanship that a life of pain and a life of suffering is made out of, and it's a game we play with ourselves, predicated solely upon this very, very simple mechanism that we are dependent upon circumstances. And in actuality, we are not dependent on circumstances, because what we are exists in a condition in which there are and can be no actual circumstances. Period. And whatever appearance there is that could be misinterpreted as being a circumstance exists in dependence on what you are, not the other way around. In other words, there's two layers of revelation. Let's use the dream analogy. So you're dreaming, but you don't know it. You think it's all real, and you're in this horrible situation. The pirate's about to cut your head off, and oh, woe is you! This is terrible, and you're suffering, and screaming and freaking out. Okay. So one layer is, oh, thank goodness, it's a dream. It's not gonna hurt me. There are no circumstances. There are no pirates, even though it looks like there are. There is no head going to be cut off, even though it looks like there is. Okay. And the next layer of revelation is, and I'm the dreamer.
Right.
So it doesn't even if the dream stops, it doesn't matter. Not only is a dream not actual circumstances, but I'm still not dependent on it, even though it's non-circumstances. It's dependent upon me. It's coming from me. It gets everything it has from me. I'm not getting anything from it. I am the fullness. I am the fullness. And all of this shows up as a pale, paltry reflection of my fullness, of my inconceivable grandiosity. True fact. Just like the dreamer, as the dreamer, you are the fountain of all good and evil. You are the fountain of all qualities whatsoever. Any dream that is conceivable, you can dream because you are all of them. You are the grand total. You are the supreme reservoir of fullness, of completeness, of lusciousness, and all of these paltry little displays are little inconceivably insignificant slivers of your fullness and your bounty that get trotted out as a display.
Wow. Nicely put. Nicely put.
Yeah, you can say that. Yeah. He was meaning me.
Stunning.
It's always you.
It's all about you, isn't it?
Man, that's what it comes down to every time.
True that.
So I have a question. So when does reality get perceived as being wholly impersonal?
Right now.
I know it is, but I'm. What I meant to say is, I mean, it's a perception, not with the senses, but it's a perception that is kind of like.
Well, it's very, very simple. When you see that it's doing itself, that's the definition of impersonal. You're not doing it. What is doing the flow of time? what is doing the flow of consciousness? What is making the sun shine? What is doing gravity? You know, what is doing the light shining in this room? It's all impersonal. It's all just happening. And when you see that, it's right now.
Right, and I think the best I can do with that is with the understanding that nothing is personal and
Yeah.
there's no you.
Yeah, nothing is personal.
Yeah, but it's an intellectual understanding as opposed to a real
Right.
experience, because
But you
like
can,
Jeffrey says, I go in and out quite
yeah,
a bit too.
but you can work on that.
Mhm.
Can you find anything in your experience that is clearly and explicitly and completely obviously impersonal?
Just the as it were, I mean the screen. I mean I know there's a screen that everything's reflecting.
That's getting very pithy and abstract. And how about the plant behind you? Look at the plant. Or these flowers right here. See these flowers? Are you making them bloom? Are you making them green? Are you making them have the shape they have?
Well, I mean, I can.
And what's your feeling?
I can assign the label that they're yellow and that they're in a vase, but in reality, it's just an energy event.
Yeah, but is it an energy event that's doing itself, i.e.,
No.
impersonal?
It's being done by the inherent intelligence.
Okay, if it's being done by the inherent intelligence, is that personal?
It's not personal.
It's not personal.
Right.
So there's an example of something in your experience right now that is completely and obviously not personal. Okay. Now you can.
I can say that about everything.
Yeah. Well, say it about everything piecemeal, and then say about everything all at once, and then tell me what it is you're seeing in that moment. You're seeing that nothing is personal. It's all impersonal. Even your body, you'd say, am I making my heart beat? Am I making my cells metabolize? What's doing that is exactly the same thing that's making these flowers be green and yellow and have the shape they are. Call it the life force, call it, the Gaia, call it the biosphere, the metabolism of the biosphere, My heart, am I doing my heartbeat? No, it's doing itself, And so, by extrapolation, am I doing my brain chemistry? No, it's doing itself, the same way the heart's doing it. Am I doing the sounds that I happen to be hearing at this moment? No, they're just there. The hum of the refrigerator and these various sounds and the journeying on of the stupid people in this room.
Excuse me.
I mean, so in other words, you can find an awful lot, a vast proportion of the field where it's completely obvious that it's impersonal. Now you may find some areas in the field of your experience where it's shades of gray, or maybe you may even find some that feel really personal. Mm-hmm. But don't worry about that for now. Just find out how much there is that's impersonal. And then go to the edge where it starts to feel, you find some things that kind of are personal, and look at that boundary. And if you look very closely, you'll find you can't really find anything objective that's a basis for saying this is impersonal, but this is personal somehow. When you look at them closely, they turn out to be totally the same category of event. And so if one is impersonal, then the other is. Or if one is personal, then the other is.
Well,
did you follow that? Can you see that?
Slightly, but what I picked up from what you just said is that if one thing is impersonal, then it all has to be impersonal.
Well, yeah, but look and see if that's true, not just as a logical proposition. So that's why I say look at it experientially. You can feel that this lamp is not personal, right? It's just here.
Yeah.
It's here by wholly impersonal objective processes. And this whole room is here by impersonal objective processes. And your clothes are here by impersonal objective processes, And your hair is here. You're not growing your hair on purpose, and you're not choosing what color it is. It's growing itself, and it's its own color. That your genetic structure is doing that, and you didn't choose your genetic structure. You're not doing your cellular metabolism, and so on and so forth. So you see, you find all these very specific things, real things in your experience that are definitely objective, right, and impersonal. And then you'll find that this is going to be the majority, easily the majority of the field of your experience. Okay. Then you may get to some things that say, wait a minute, but this feels kind of personal. Then at that point, okay, so you hold this here, this feels personal. Then go back, hold that there, and sort of set it there. Now go back to something that's definitely impersonal and just really be with that experience for a while. Then go back to something to what you felt personal, be with that experience and feel what the experience is like and what its texture is and what it's made of. Go back to the one that's impersonal, go back to the one that's personal. And if you do this often enough, you'll discover that you can't find much of an actual objective difference between what you're experiencing as personal and what you're experiencing as impersonal. They're just there. They're just experiences showing up mysteriously. And saying they're personal or impersonal is kind of just a thought. There's no real basis for it in terms of the actual experiences themselves. And you can verify this by literally experimenting. This lamp is impersonal. My thoughts are personal, say, arbitrarily. Lamp's impersonal, thoughts are personal. What's the thought like? The thought's like this. What's the lamp like? The lamp's like this. What's the thought like? Thought's like this. And eventually, the lamp is a mysterious energy presence in my experience. Thought, it's kind of a mysterious energy presence in my experience, isn't it? Lamp, mysterious energy, thought, mysterious energy, And after a while you see, they're kind of the same. So if the lamp's impersonal, then the thought's impersonal. Or if the thought's personal, then the lamp's personal. And that's cool too. You can say it's all personal just as easily as saying it's all impersonal. But it's all the same.
Or how about, if a thought comes up, I didn't make the thought happen.
That's what I mean, exactly.
So it's just...
So in what sense is it personal if you're not doing it? Can you stop it? That's another thing, like I was saying earlier. Find out what you cannot not do. That's reality, i.e. impersonal. And what's impersonal is what you cannot not do. If something is personal, then you can not do it.
Right.
So if my heartbeat is personal, I can just, my heart's going to stop now. It doesn't happen. I can't stop my heartbeat, therefore it's not personal. My thinking's happening. Okay, now I'm going to stop my thinking. So find out what you cannot not do, and that's impersonal, that's real, that's reality.
So you can't stop your thinking.
You can't stop anything. Look and see, try.
Right, I'm sorry.
Stop your breathing, stop your thinking, stop your life, it ain't going to happen. It's all this is just doing itself.
But isn't the confusion that we can do things like I can't stop my heart, but I can make it go faster by jogging around or whatever?
Can you?
Well, sure.
You can only do it if you do it.
What do you mean? Yeah.
What means?
So
if you do it, what's doing it?
Well, the notion is that there's a choice, a stepping, a doing.
Right, but look very closely at that choice.
At the doing?
Yeah, say you can choose to get up and jog. Right. Can you choose to get up and jog?
Yeah.
Well, look and see. And if you can choose to get up and jog, can you choose to get up and jog? In other words, look at it this way. If there's volitional processes, okay, you follow?
Yeah.
If there's volitional processes, for them to be truly volitional, you had to have the volition to have the volitional process.
Right.
If you can choose to get up and jog, you have to choose
That choosing.
the choosing. You have to choose to make that choice. And if that is truly volitional, you had to choose to You see what I'm getting at? In other words, this is an important point. In other words, if there is volitional process and any link in the chain of its occurrence is non-volitional, the volitional process is not really a volitional process. It's actually automatic, i.e. spontaneous, i.e. impersonal. And if you look closely at all your choices, at some point the choice was not even on the horizon, and a mysterious emergence occurred in your consciousness where all of a sudden it seemed viable to involve yourself with that choice, or to involve yourself with involving yourself with that choice, or whatever. But there comes a crisis point where before a certain point that wasn't even on the horizon, that wasn't even on the table. And then there's some mysterious emergence that you do not deliberately choose, i.e. non-volitional, where all of a sudden you're engaged in this process, and then you can say, oh, I'm choosing to get up and jog. But, this afternoon at 4 o'clock, the notion of sitting here talking about choosing to get up and jog didn't exist in your universe. And at some point the idea popped into your head to talk about it. Did you choose to have that idea pop in your head? Did you take that idea and say, I'm going to create this idea and I'm going to put it in my head? It just, at some point an idea, I could jog. And I could choose to. But the statement isn't really true. Because the choice ultimately originates from a spontaneous process. Spontaneous originates from a mysterious emergence in consciousness.
So this all choice is just a mirage then?
You think? I mean, here's another way to look at it.
Cancel a lot of stuff.
Yeah. Here's another way to look at it that's even more powerful. Okay. This is a really good one. If you follow this, this will be fun. Okay. All conscious processes are actually unconscious because the conscious mind is not generating itself. The conscious mind is being generated by, i.e. done by, the unconscious mind. So conscious thought is actually wholly unconscious.
That was a sentence straight out.
An example.
Past all that already.
I'm sorry?
I thought we got past that earlier. There isn't any consciousness.
Well, okay, there's no consciousness. So how can there be volition?
That's right. How can you choose to go jogging to relax your heart rate?
Well, that is a good point, because right there, it's like this chooses or something, so to speak, right? This occurs. But we talk often about the inherent intelligence of this, and we're not talking about dead things. This is going on in an amazingly intelligent way. What is intelligence?
But intelligence is not conscious. Intelligence is not personal. And that's why you use the qualifier inherent. Inherent intelligence is the intelligence which inheres in reality, rather than some intelligence which someone or some agency is doing.
Right. Well, I've been thinking also.
It's the other way around. Individuals and agents are being done by the inherent intelligence, not the other way around. In the same sense that our conscious mind is being done by an unconscious mind.
Well, what would an unconscious mind be?
Inherent intelligence.
A good snorty laugh.
In other words, non-volitional, non-personal being. Being/functioning/radiance/ this.
Unconscious,
unconscious in the sense of not personal. We identify with...
But known?
Huh?
But known?
Yes, certainly it's known. It knows itself. Its being is a knowing.
But it's not a conscious knowing. It's not conscious.
It's not conscious in a personal sense. It's conscious in a hyper-personal sense, or a super-personal sense. it's actually the true person. The true person is a non-person, and the apparent person is a shadow of, and a puppet of, and a very small epiphenomena of the true being, which is inherent intelligence, which is what you really are. So you're not the human being you may think you are. You're not the personality you may think you are. You're not the conscious stream of thought you may think you are. You are the system that is generating those things, and that system is what I have called the inherent intelligence.
Which is way past choosing or not choosing.
Yeah. I mean, whatever it's doing, we can't approach it within those simplistic human qualifications because it's
Nameless.
So inherent intelligence, I.
Coincidence or communist conspiracy? You make the call. And on that note, we're closing it down for tonight. Good night, everybody.
He gets a gold star.